I'm Nathan and welcome to Stories with a Twang. I have 2 stories for you today, so sit back and relax. Our first story today is called The Time My Friend Wouldn't Stop Staring at a Painting by No Deal 9616. Have you ever got lost in an obsession? So engrossed in an infatuation that you simply disappeared from the world at large? Have you seen a dear friend isolate themselves from their friends, their family, their work, only to one day simply disappear altogether? That's what I think happened to an ex-coworker of mine, and it all started when we received an anonymous donation of a painting. I used to work at a public art museum in a decent-sized city. We weren't exactly rivaling the Met or anything, but sometimes we'd get a traveling exhibition with artwork from somebody you may have heard of. Our permanent exhibitions had paintings from around the state and the city, as well as private donations of European paintings from well-to-do families in the city. We acquire our works of art through proper channels. Somebody sends somebody else an email, then it gets delivered or picked up. Normal, right? That painting, however, was left by the back door, wrapped in brown butcher's paper, with the words, "Take it," written in black marker across the front. Half wondered why they didn't just throw it away. We're pretty generous about accepting art pieces, if it's at least by someone remotely famous and we can verify it, or even competently done, then we either accept it or ship it somewhere else if we don't have room. So when I found it by the back door next to the dumpster, I brought it inside and laid it flat on the desk in my office. When I peeled back the brown paper wrapping, I was underwhelmed. The painting was of an unremarkable house, painted mostly white, gray-tiled sloped roof, a porch, 4 windows on the first story, 5 windows on the second story. It was daytime as well, with a few trees poorly painted in the background. Architecture didn't look particularly characteristic of anything I knew of, and I couldn't even tell where in the country it was from, or when. But other than that, the painting itself wasn't well done. I think the proportions of the house may have been wrong just from looking at it, and the color scheme seemed to be inconsistent from one side to the other, as if the painter resumed coloring it after a few days but ran out of the original paint they were using. Almost on cue, the museum's foremost appraiser and my best friend at work, Ben, walked in, unannounced as usual, and stood next to me looking at the painting.
"I didn't know we were getting a new piece,"
he said in a mocking tone. "Oh, I found this by the dumpster outside. Thought it was something of value," I replied. Ben waved his hand over the house. "Clearly not. You should finish the job and actually throw it in the dumpster." I shrugged my shoulders. "It might be something of value. Maybe. I don't know, that's your job," I said to him with a smile. Unceremoniously, he picked it up with both hands and flipped it over. "Something family house in something Lena? I think half the job is done. Somebody's family home in North Carolina." He pointed to the corner of the back of the frame. Although half of it was worn out, you could still see family house and in Lena written there. I don't think we'll end up keeping it, but check it out before we ship it out, okay? I wish I didn't tell him that. I wish I told him to throw it in the dumpster where I found it, but I didn't. So I went back to my normal duties for the rest of the day and didn't see him until I arrived to work the following day, where I found him sitting in his office staring at the painting. I raised my hand to say hello, but he was so damn fixated on the painting he either ignored me or didn't see me. Said hello to get his attention, but his damned eyes just stared at the painting. I walked around and placed my hand on his shoulder to wake him out of his trance, but he barely moved and just kept staring at the painting.
"Oh, hello,"
he mumbled rather unenthusiastically. "Rude. Sounds like you haven't gotten any sleep."
"Just working on this painting, like you said."
I turned to look at the painting, the seemingly unremarkable painting, and noticed that it had changed. It was still the same house, that same white two-storied house with the gray tiles and the front porch, but somehow, seemingly, it had changed from daytime to night. And now, again, I was slightly shocked and questioning what I was seeing, because now there was a slender brunette woman in a sleeveless light pink dress on the front porch, leaning against the rails and staring off into the side, illuminated only by the light coming from inside through the window. It just didn't make any sense. It just wasn't how I left it.
She looks so sad, doesn't she?
Ben said to me in a low voice, like all the energy had been snapped from him. Ben, have you changed the painting? Restored it in any way? Painted over it? There is a pause, then Ben said,
No, I haven't. She's always been there.
Ben, no, seriously. I swear it was daytime in the painting, and she definitely wasn't there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Not trusting my lying eyes, I whipped out my phone and took a few snapshots of the painting. Then I looked back at Ben, noticing his red sunken eyes. Concerned for my friend, I picked up the painting to his almost immediate protest. I'm just gonna go put this in the storage room for the time being, and
I need to save her.
You need to get something to eat, I think. Honestly, Ben, it's just a crappy painting. I left Ben to mumble to himself at his desk as I whisked the painting away to the storage room. Taking a good look at it, I realized that color discrepancy I noticed yesterday was gone. It had almost become lifelike, almost real, but I shook my head and snapped out of it. I decided to just leave Ben to do some more research while I found another museum or art gallery to take the painting. When I got back to my office, I emailed the photos of the painting to at least one museum in every state. Now you're probably thinking that's excessive, but I just wanted to get rid of the damn thing. There was something unnerving about the way it was affecting Ben. After that, I shot off some emails, reviewed our upcoming exhibitions, and dealt with a few customer complaints about the state of our air conditioning. It wasn't busier than any other day, but it was consistent work, so it meant a late lunch from our museum's cafe. Bought a slice of cake for Ben as well and brought it to his office, only to find him sitting against the wall, staring at that same painting, leaning against the side of his desk. He didn't say anything as I walked up to him and placed the cake in the box next to him on the ground. Then I took another look at that damn painting. It was daylight now, the white house surrounded by the vibrant green colors of the grass and trees surrounding it. Then there was that same brunette woman in the light pink dress. This time, she was sitting on the steps leading up to the porch. But here was the thing. It was like she was staring straight ahead at us. I struggled to take out my phone. My hands were so sweaty and fumbly, but I eventually found the pictures I had only taken this morning, confirming that the painting had changed from night to day and showing that the woman had moved. In all my years at the job, I'd never seen anything quite like this. The thought that a painting, a still image created from dry pigment and canvas, could change so rapidly started to spur my imagination. Then I decided Ben was playing a prank on me. Ben, where'd you put that painting from this morning? As fantastical as it may seem, I concluded that Ben had created a whole new painting just to mess with me.
It's the same painting from this morning,
he said drolly, pointing to the painting leaning against his desk. Okay, but Ben, it looks different.
It looked like that when I brought it out of the storage room.
Ben, you didn't paint over it, did you? Improve on the painting? He looked at me incredulously. How dare you accuse me of painting over it? How could you think this painting needs to be improved in any way? I stood back a little. It wasn't like Ben to be so defensive. Kidding. Didn't think you did, really. Something was up with him and it was starting to bug me, but not wanting to start a fight with my best friend, I decided to change the subject. So, have you at least discovered where the painting's from? Ben shook his head in the negative. Not even the general area? Did you at least confirm it's American? Again, Ben shook his head. When? Who? He shook his head. So, have you found anything about the painting at all? Have you done anything besides stare at this painting today?
I just can't take my eyes off of her. She's simply...
I looked at the painting and then shook my head. Ben, maybe I've been overworking you lately. Take the rest of the day off, okay, bud? He looked at me for an instant and then straight back at the painting. Look, sometimes we become obsessed with our job at the museum, become overawed with the history we handle, knowing there can be centuries, sometimes even millennia of stories behind a single painting. But Ben was starting to scare me, so I went over to the painting and picked it up, flipping it so Ben could only see the back of the frame. When I did, he sprang up immediately and came within inches of my nose.
What are you doing?
Why did you... Go home. I'm not kidding. I'm ordering you to go home. He looked at me, real funny. I'd never seen it from him before, as if he were weighing whether or not he could take me on in a fight. My knees started to shake a little bit and I readjusted my grip on the frame. In those types of moments, you start to think with such clarity, and all I could think of was how absurd it was that Ben was becoming so agitated over such a dumb painting. But we didn't fight. Ben walked out of the room and didn't say a word, leaving me standing there with the painting and an unopened box of cake lying on the ground. I came into my office the next morning and the first thing I checked was my emails, like I do every morning. But one email in particular came from a museum on the East Coast. I'm not going to say where, I don't want people to give them trouble. It was from one of their appraisers who apparently knew the identity of the painting I found a few days ago. I'll just copy and paste the email here. I think I have an answer to the identity of the painting in the screenshot you've attached. It's an old painting from the local area, dates just after the turn of this last century, but the first stories appear around 1906, but the painting may be earlier than that. Legends say the painting was an amateur work from an Audrey LeBlanche, a young housewife who found herself bored and alone in her new marriage to a local well-to-do playboy who was forced to settle down. Well, he didn't, and he often left her home alone for weeks at a time, presumably off drinking and having affairs. Long story short, she wanted a divorce, but is pressured from her own parents and her husband's parents to stay together. She feels trapped and kills herself. Tragic, but mundane. However, legend goes that the husband found the painting after her suicide and sells it for pennies to a local gallery. But then, there's stories of men just gazing at the painting all day, like it had some trance. Then, there were reportedly acts of vandalism that occurred frequently, changing the scene from day to night and vice versa, and including the likeness of the woman in the painting. Then, apparently, it was stolen, only for it to reappear. Then stolen again, only for it to reappear again. If you ask me, the painting itself isn't that great, but our museum would love to have it as a tourist draw to bring in the local true crime audience as well as the urban legend crowd. If you would kindly organize to send it to us, it would be much appreciated. That last line was music to my ears, after all the recent strangeness since I found it, so I practically rushed to the storage room to pack the painting myself, except it wasn't there. I searched and searched, but I couldn't find it. I was at a loss. I knew I put it there last night. There were only a few people who had access to the storage room, including me, and Ben was sitting at his desk, eyes fixated on that painting, leveled on the desk in front of him. I slowly walked up to the desk. As I came closer, I could see the changes that occurred. It was late evening. A faint orange glow seemed to surround the white house with gray tiles. And there she was, the brunette wearing her light pink dress, leaning against the front fence, Audrey LeBlanche. She was staring down at the ground, her eyes almost closed, her brow furrowed, her lips pouting. She looked lonely. Ben, I said as I looked at the painting, I found out where the painting's from in an email I sent yesterday. Ben didn't say anything. It has a bit of a weird history, but good news, they've agreed to take the painting off our hands, which is great, isn't it? I mean, it's not like it's from the local area, and it doesn't exactly fit in our current exhibition's theme, so it's fantastic that they've agreed to take it, which means we'll get it packed up and shipped out this afternoon.
No,
he said softly. Look, I get it. Sometimes you see something in art that others don't see, but that's just part of the job, right? To let go of works of art, to stop obsessing with. My hand slowly drifted toward the painting's frame as I said this, my fingers firmly grasping the frame before I suddenly yanked the painting off Ben's desk. Almost reflexively, as if every survival instinct activated all at once, Ben lunged out of his chair, over the painting, and locked my head in his arm. I gasped for breath. Being suffocated by my best friend, all I could do was claw at Ben's arms as they tightened around my neck. Ben spewed obscene curses at me, which was enough to alarm the rest of the office. Thus, 2 of the 300-pound security guards that we employed at the museum rushed to the office and struggled to stop Ben from throttling me to death. They eventually succeeded, of course. After pulling Ben away from me, I was bent over on all fours and watched Ben being dragged away, kicking and screaming, cursing me with even more obscenities and slurs that I never thought Ben was even possible of dreaming of. Truly, it was as if my friend was gone and had been replaced with some deranged lunatic. Apparently, he kept going on like that for 15 minutes before the police arrived, where he was subsequently thrown in the back of a police car and sprinted off to the nearest station. One of the guards said Ben wouldn't shut up about her, and how I was trying to keep her away or something. Needless to say, I was given the rest of the day off and told to take as much time off as I needed. The museum director was apparently worried that Ben had been overworked and was afraid I might snap like Ben. But I was stuck in a malaise for the rest of the day, barely eating, struggling to sleep. When your best friend tries to kill you, the fun gets sucked out of life, you know? However, I didn't want to take time off, and I was back in the office the next day. My first order of business was to send that damn painting off to the East Coast as far away from me as possible. I had the packaging, the labels, and the stamps all ready to go when I found the painting in the storage room. Out of sheer curiosity, out of all the hell I've been put through, I had one last look at the painting. It was like the first time I saw it. Daytime. Weird color inconsistency across the painting, but there was the brunette in the light pink dress, standing before the front door, smiling and holding hands with a man, and I swear on my life, a man that looked strangely like Ben. Sick of all of it, I practically threw the painting in my prepared box and handed it straight over to the courier waiting for me by the back door. It's been a year since I received that painting. Ben was never seen again. As far as the museum knows, he was released later that afternoon after he settled down and was going to be given a suspension, but no one could contact him. Personally, I wanted him to come back. That outburst was so unlike him, I thought he would return to work like his usual self, feel really sorry, and buy me cake from the cafe for a month. I even visited his home, but I didn't find him there. Even contacted his parents and his other friends, but nobody's seen him since that day. He's practically vanished into thin air. If I told people that I thought Ben was in the painting now after all this time, people would want to know what hard drugs I was taking. Hopefully he reads this post and comes back. No hard feelings. Our last story is called God Knows My Pain by Moon Man. People say ghosts and spirits like to roam the places they had the most connection with in life, like the places they had their most precious belongings in or the paths they commonly went through in their daily life. They stay here to try and fulfill something they left unfinished in their earthly times. That's what keeps them attached to this world. One day, at the end of summer, my mother asked my brother and I if we could stay over the night at my grandma's place to receive a package that had been delivered at around that time. Nobody would be able to answer the door if it arrived. My uncles that also lived there both were working at that time, and my granny had Alzheimer's, so it was dangerous for her to answer the door to a complete stranger. This story would not have happened if we had said no to the request. But since we both had nothing to do on that week and sharing some time with our grandmother didn't sound like something bad at all, we both said yes. We traveled from our hometown to the nearby city so we could stay the night at her house. She had lived there almost all her life, since she was a little girl, so that house has some brutal and heartbreaking stories. When we arrived at the front door, suddenly I started to feel a mild headache that over time started to feel more and more impossible to ignore. My brother, on the other hand, didn't feel much more than joy for seeing our grandmother after a long time. We were both happy in the end to spend time with her. Everything went fairly normal that day. We even had lunch and dinner at the table and saw some movies on the TV. Other than the constant headache I had all along that day, everything felt right. This would change at night though. It was time for us to choose our beds, and since it was a small-sized house, there wasn't a lot of options. I chose to sleep on the couch, and my brother chose the room at the left end of the hallway. The room my brother chose has always made us uncomfortable. In that room, there's a big window, without curtains, that faces the backyard. That window has always creeped us out since at night it's pitch black and you can barely see anything outside the house. That means that whatever's outside that window cannot be seen. He was hesitant at first, but since it was the only room with a bed, with the exception of my grandma's and uncle's rooms, he finally succumbed to the idea. It was bedtime already, so we both headed our directions and went to sleep. The night passed like a train, and from my side, everything went fairly normal. I watched my phone to fall asleep and had a good night's rest. Until suddenly I was woken early by my little brother begging me to sleep beside me. I asked why, but I couldn't understand what he was saying, so I just fell asleep right away. In the morning, I saw him wide awake there, sitting on a chair. He clearly didn't sleep much last night. I asked him once again if something bad had happened. As I asked that question, I saw a look of fear in his eyes, as if he had seen something terrible happen. Then he told me. After we both went to bed, he had trouble falling asleep, especially while having that window beside him. He just kept rolling side to side on the bed looking for a good position to fall asleep in until he finally closed his eyes. This placid feeling wouldn't last long as he was woken by the out-of-breath voice of an old man whispering, "God knows my pain." His heart pounded fast, just as the heart of a gazelle being chased by a lion. In the corner of that room, a predatory presence stood still, laying his malevolent eyes upon him. The sound and the beating of his own heart was all there was in that black room. He couldn't actually see what was there standing, but he felt that if he moved, it would know he was awake. So like that, he lay there all night till the sun rose above, so he could go to me and feel a little more peace by my side. When he told me all of this, a shiver ran through my spine. As I knew the truth, I knew who he really was. I never met my grandpa. All I know from him is what my mother has told me over the years, contrary to my brother who doesn't know anything about him. I know my fair share of stories. One day, he arrived bloodied and bruised to the house. The cops had beaten him till he could barely move anymore. He barely made it to the front door. For context, my country went through a violent dictatorship around that time, and it was normal for this kind of incidents to happen. Getting beaten this badly or even to death by the police or military was a common occurrence in those cruel times. So when my grandpa entered the house, everyone knew he didn't have long till he gave his last breath. His insides were mashed and destroyed, and all they could do was stand beside him on his deathbed. He pushed through 2 weeks of constant agony, probably asking God to ease his pain since he was a religious man, till he finally heard him and ended his misery. He left 5 children at the care of my, at that time, abusive grandmother. Remember what I told you about ghosts and their connection with this world? Well, there's nothing my grandpa loved more than making furniture. He loved sanding and sculpting and everything he did in his shop. That workshop was located in a far room at the left end of the hallway, the very place where my brother had slept. Some days passed and the package finally arrived at the house. We headed to our town shortly after, and although my headache disappeared not long after, this event will always inhabit my head. I would like to give a giant thank you to this week's authors for their incredible stories. If you have any stories you would like me to read on the show, you can send them on over to storieswithatwang@gmail.com. The show is on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at storieswithatwang@gmail.com. It would mean an awful lot if you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, and don't forget to share with your friends and family as well. It could really help the show grow. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and until next time, remember that a little twang goes a long way.